It's my delight to introduce our webinar. Hey guys, it's my delight to introduce our webinar presenter, Dr. Charles Mok. I'm Dr. Greg Laurence from Memphis, Tennessee, and like our presenter, I'm a cosmetic surgeon. Further into my career, I've done the same as Dr. Mok, and that is moved into what we call the lifestyle wellness area of medicine. This includes regenerative medicine. It includes hormone balance, which is going to be our topic for this webinar. I'm the 2016-17 American Society of Cosmetic Breast Surgery president, and it was at that venue about a decade ago that I met our presenter, Dr. Mok. I feel a connection with not only Dr. Mok, I always have, because of, I think, what my first car was. And as you know, Dr. Mok is from Michigan. A lot of his patients are, even though he has an international clientele. My first vehicle was a 1975 Ford Pinto. And as you Michiganders probably know, this was Ford's first experimentation with the overhead cam, which has become a staple in automobiles. And I can tell you the number of times I drilled out the camshaft, I have felt closer and closer to my friends up in Motor City. So I'm glad to be with you guys and be able to introduce my colleague. It was Wikipedia that I actually tried to prepare for tonight, and I decided I would look up Dr. Mok. I knew he would be on the Wikipedia page, that doctor that definitely will change the world, and he wasn't. In fact, there wasn't even that Wikipedia page. But if there was, Dr. Mok would be on that page. He is a Forbes author of Testosterone, Strong Enough for a Man but Made for a Woman, and then his new book that he'll be talking with you about at this webinar, If Your Testosterone is Low, You're Going to Get Fat. Dr. Mok is owner and CEO of Allure Medical Group. He is a pioneer in advanced modern prevention, healthcare, and wellness. And as cosmetic surgeons, we've always recognized that we have the power with the scalpel to meaningfully change someone's happiness in life. And with these new endeavors, as you'll find out during this webinar, ones that you will be super excited about hearing about, Dr. Mok is going to be discussing insights about how men can have changed lives and increase health without the use of a scalpel. Enjoy your time with my colleague, Dr. Charles Mok.
Thanks, Dr. Laurence. That was great. I think it's freezing down in Memphis, Tennessee right now, so you feel like we do. So thanks for joining us. We're going to have live questions. You can put in questions. We'll answer those towards the end of the presentation. And I brought Dennis with us. He's going to talk about his own experience with testosterone replacement therapy. And Dennis, what kind of symptoms were you kind of experiencing before you?
Well, before I had the testosterone done, I was kind of, I got a little bit, I couldn't work as long in a day as I used to. My hours, it was like, when I made it to 10 hours, I was out of gas. And prior to that, when I was younger, I worked 16-hour day every day. Didn't bother me. And, I had an opportunity to read your book. I saw in there something about that it would, reduce the chance of a heart attack by 50% in men. And I said, ding, that's kind of smart. I'm getting close to 60 at the time, and I'm there now. And it's like, this could become more important. And, it also had something to do with being tired all the time and sharpness. So I said, what the heck, let's check this out.
That's one of the most common symptoms. Because what happens is men tend to think that testosterone is related mostly like to erectile function or to sexual energy. That's sort of an old legacy, because we first started using this in the 50s for men who had their testicles were damaged. We don't say balls, but the testicles were damaged, or they had brain damage, or they had an extra female chromosome and they had no sexuality, and we give them testosterone. But then we found out later on that testosterone affected every organ of your body. And one of the most common symptoms that men experience, what you talked about, were like at 2 in the afternoon, they're kind of done. They're tired, and that the energy's not there. And they start blaming, getting older or getting, the job or stress. In reality, sometimes it's a hormonal issue. And now we know that testosterone is linked to diabetes, like I say, heart attacks. If testosterone is low, you're more likely to die of a heart attack if you don't treat it. Obesity is a big one. Diabetes is a big one. Demineralization of your bones is a big one. Fractures, decreased athletic performance, obviously. Advance the slide. So let's look at my notes here. I want to talk to, okay, so I'm getting back on track here. The book that I wrote is called If Your Testosterone is Low, You're Going to Get Fat, and 17 Other Things the FDA Doesn't Want You to Know About Testosterone. The reason I use this kind of intriguing topic, the things that FDA doesn't want you to know, is I mentioned that the FDA in 1952 approved testosterone for men that were missing their testicles or had damaged their testicles. Back in the 30s and 40s, children might get mumps when they're kids, and it can have what's called orchitis, where the testicles don't function. People would have brain damage where they have no ability for their brain to tell their testicles to make testosterone. Or they might have an extra female chromosome and develop female-like features. And we found that these men typically had a lot of health problems. They typically were obese, they had no sexuality, and they started using testosterone to replace it. And then years later, I mean, it's 1952, now 60 years later, we find that men were using testosterone when they were having low testosterone, and they still had testicles, or they still had a functioning brain, or they didn't have an extra female chromosome. And there was actually that low T campaign. You might have heard them. Do you have low T on television? And you notice you're not seeing them anymore. That's because the FDA sued the drug manufacturers and said, hey, we as the FDA approve this for men missing their testicles with a brain disorder or with an extra female chromosome. And if a man has low testosterone just because of age, even though it might work and benefit them, you can't market it to them. You can't tell them about it. You're not allowed to tell them about it. And they also put other restrictions on testosterone, claiming that we don't know if it doesn't cause diseases. So it scared a lot of doctors and a lot of even patients into thinking that maybe the FDA knows something we don't. No, they're basing it on their 1952 decision. Okay, 1952, they approved testosterone for something. One thing that we really understand is that the FDA does not regulate the practice of medicine. They simply regulate the manufacture and marketing of drugs. Okay, so manufacture and marketing of drugs, and drug companies can't tell you that there's other reasons your testosterone gets low, but we can. I can tell you, and I called out the FDA and 17 things that they sort of wanted to mislead patients about, because back in 1952, we didn't know, but they don't reapprove it. See, they don't make up new reasons to use a drug. You can go forward to the next slide. This is called the ADAM questionnaire, ADAM, and it's the androgen deficiency in the aging male. And if you go through these questions, you can, with about 88%, what's called sensitivity, determine if your testosterone may be low. So we'll pick up men that have low testosterone. You look at the bottom, it says if you answer yes, number 1 or 7, or yes to more than 3, you may have low testosterone. Again, 88% sensitive. Do you have a decrease in sex drive or libido? If you say yes, that's a good sensitivity for having low testosterone by itself. Do you have lack of energy? Do you have a decrease in strength and or endurance? Have you lost height? Because your bones get thinner as you low testosterone. Have you noticed a decrease in enjoyment of life, just well-being? Are you sad or grumpy? You know, grumpy old man, there's a low testosterone. Are your erections less strong? Have you noticed a recent deterioration in your ability to play sports? Are you falling asleep after dinner? And has there been a recent deterioration in your work performance? Again, if you answer 3 of those questions yes, or number 1 or number 7 yes, there's this 88% sensitive for picking up low testosterone. Now, we still use blood work, and I'll get into that in a little bit, because blood work is kind of the way we definitively diagnose it. But there's actually some problems with that, and we'll talk about it. But if you answer these questions yes, you should be thinking about checking for low testosterone. Next slide. This is a journal published in 2016, Mayo Clinic Proceedings. And they came out in response to the FDA's re-upping the ante on saying that they have never approved testosterone for any condition other than missing testicles, brain damage, or extra female chromosome. So they put together from 11 different countries on 4 continents a group of experts, expert physicians, and they invited the FDA, who did not participate. They had put together experts on testosterone replacement therapy to come up with the definitive indications. And if the FDA says this, what are we saying as physicians? What are we saying as experts? And what should doctors be telling their patients? Which, again, the FDA does not regulate physicians or the practice medicine. They regulate manufacturers, okay? And again, testosterone, because it's a drug that's been around for years, there's just outdated rules. So we're going to go over that. So let's go to the next screen. So I'm just going through the 9 resolutions, and we'll kind of talk about them a little bit. So testosterone deficiency is a well-established, significant medical condition that negatively affects male sexuality, reproduction, general health, and quality of life. And they brought this statement out in response to the fact that the FDA said it doesn't occur. The FDA actually said this doesn't occur unless testicles are gone, brain damage, extra female chromosome. They decided that there was no such thing as low testosterone. They said the condition didn't even exist. In 2013, 14, and 15, they reaffirmed their position that in 1952, they decided there was only one kind of low testosterone that's associated with medical disorders, and otherwise it didn't exist. When we look at, sexuality, we know there's a link to that. You look at the Levitra, Viagra, Cialis advertisements. Most of those men obviously have low testosterone. Reproduction, obviously, we're not going to talk about that. It's usually not so much of an issue. General health and quality of life. Well, if your testosterone is low, you're going to get fat. And this is one of the things that we know definitively. Now, obviously, there's other reasons to put weight on, the way you're eating and exercising. But these seem to be linked to our hormone levels as well. And unequivocally, if you take a man who's got normal testosterone and we give him a chemical to block testosterone production, weight goes up immediately. So when you turn it back on, it goes back down. Studies have shown that men followed over a decade who were low testosterone and were treated, who were obese, became of normal weight. In fact, a study following 411 men for 8 years, these were men who were obese, followed for 8 years, 411 of them. At the end of the 8 years, there were only 3 men that did not have substantial weight loss. The other ones, they went to pretty much a normal weight. My message is slow down. I'm sorry. I'm talking too fast. I get excited. Okay. So I want to, just kind of put this way: it is quality of life. Depression gets better. Heart disease gets better. Heart failure gets better. Kidney failure gets better. Every condition that we've looked at, every medical condition or psychological condition that we look at, has an impact by low testosterone making it worse and normalizing testosterone and it getting better. Good. Slide forward. Signs and this is resolution 2 from the International Consensus Panel. The symptoms and signs of testosterone deficiency occur as a result of low levels of testosterone and may benefit from treatment regardless of whether there is identified underlying etiology. The purpose for this resolution was to say we as experts, we as physicians, we in the medical community do not agree with the FDA that the only way to get low testosterone is to have your testicles injured, your brain injured, or get an extra female chromosome. Okay, and if it does occur from aging. It does this occur with no explanation whatsoever. And unlike the FDA, who recommends against, they specifically recommend against treating it. And the only influence they have is obviously on the drug manufacturers. But the reality is testosterone gets low for no reason that we can explain, just time. We have things we call primary and secondary, which might do some blood tests and figure out, is it your brain or your testicles that are making less testosterone? But the cause is not relevant. I mean, we look for them, but in most cases, the testicles are normal and the brain is normal and there's not an extra female chromosome and it's just low. And it occurs in a significant percentage of men. And if it's not treated, it leads to more obesity, more heart attacks, more strokes, and more death. So even though there might not be an underlying etiology, you can be treated. Okay, you don't have to find the cause. Next slide. Testosterone deficiency is a global public health concern. And depending on how you slice it, this is hundreds of billions of dollars in wasted healthcare efforts at treating conditions that are clearly the result of low testosterone. I'll give you an example. Men with if you look at men who have, say, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, which we call adult onset diabetes, usually associated with some obesity, these men, almost 100% of them have some degree of low testosterone. And we know the studies have shown that if we replace for testosterone in men who have diabetes, they trend towards not having diabetes. Okay, that's a $600 billion problem in the United States alone annually. We look at obesity. Obesity is tied into, obviously, diabetes and into heart disease. Obesity is about an $800 billion a year problem. We know testosterone has the potential to reverse obesity. It certainly has a positive impact on it consistently. We look at heart attacks and strokes alone. Studies have shown that men who have low testosterone, if they're not treated with testosterone, they have double the risk of having a stroke or heart attack in the next 10 years. Again, $600 billion a year problem. The cost nationally, worldwide, is enormous. It can't even be measured. Next slide. Testosterone therapy for men is an effective, rational, and evidence-based. So the FDA went on to say that there's insufficient evidence to show that testosterone is useful or safe in men with conditions that aren't related to testicle issues or brain issues or extra female chromosome. And that's actually totally false. There's been thousands of peer-reviewed journals showing that not only is testosterone safe for men with low testosterone, it's almost like the opposite. If we don't treat low testosterone with testosterone replacement therapy, we are being grossly negligent. And in my opinion, it is not an option. If your testosterone is low, you're going to get fat. Yeah, this title of the book is kind of a cool name. But if your testosterone is low, you're going to more likely die. Okay, the studies done, we look at clinical studies done in you only have to get an FDA approval for a drug or to get a a nod for establishing a laboratory normal, you only need about 100 people to study. And you can get it at FDA approval for a new drug or a new parameters for labs. Well, let's look at 2017 in the Midwest. It was the University of St. Louis, I believe. They did a study where they followed 83,000 men. This was in the veterans system. And the veterans has got the most advanced, we have issues with Veterans Administration and healthcare, but they've got the most advanced electronic medical record. And they went to the charts of 83,000 men over 6 years that had documented low testosterone. These guys had blood work that showed their testosterone were low. 83,000 men for 6 years. Okay, that's an enormous study, bigger than any study done for any drug in history, okay, ever. They found, and they looked at whether or not they got treated with testosterone replacement, and some men did, and some men didn't, about half and half, because we thought it was an option. In the next 6 years, the men who had low testosterone that weren't treated had twice as many heart attacks, twice as many strokes, and twice as likely to die. Okay, it's not optional. It's not optional. If you had high cholesterol that was sky high, your doctor's going to put you on medication. Your blood pressure's high, it's going to wear at your organ to put you on medications. Why are we ignoring low testosterone like it's an option? It's absurd. So it's evidence-based and rational. Next slide.
Dr. Mok, I have a live question coming
Sure.
in. What kind of side effects would someone have with testosterone?
So there's really only one medical side effect that occurs with low testosterone and treated. So there's a condition called polycythemia, and we know that hormones regulate the production of red blood cells. And you probably heard of getting a hemoglobin and hematocrit. You donate blood at the Red Cross, they check that. And about 1 in 100 men will have a rise in their hemoglobin and hematocrit. And we check that with the blood works. We check it once a year. And they do, the guy go donate blood to the Red Cross. But there are no other known adverse events in testosterone replacement therapy in men with low T. That's a great question.
And one more live question that kind of relates to what you were just discussing. Audience asks, will being on testosterone help me live longer?
So that's a great question because we don't know. We haven't run studies. Like in the VA study, they showed that if you were a man in your 60s and you had low testosterone, you were twice as likely to survive. Okay. Now, how does it portray the longevity? There's been a couple papers written, and they're trying to estimate how much would it cost you and how many years would take it in order to extend and how many years of life. The answer is probably. I mean, certainly you're less likely to die, so you're going to live longer, but can it create a substantial longevity? We don't really have the answers yet because the studies haven't been carried out long enough. Now, what will happen is on that 83,000 man study, they might follow that for 20 years and then be able to get that like predicted answer. You get this many more years, you get 5 more years or 10. So you don't really know that yet. That's a great one. Go ahead, the next slide. Okay, there's no testosterone concentration threshold that reliably distinguishes those who will respond to treatment from those who will not. And this is a very important resolution because one thing that happened is back in the 1920s, when they started establishing normal blood tests, they take like 100 men between 18 and 95, and they'd measure their level of whatever thing they're checking. And they say, well, the bottom 2, we're not going to count them, and the top 2, we're not going to count them, so this is normal. We call a normal testosterone in men at 280 to 1100. And that means that if you're below 280, you're low testosterone. But if you're 290, you're normal. Well, it's actually just a big nothing. Studies have shown that there's no level that correlates to symptoms of low testosterone. And not 100%. There's some correlation, but it's not universal. And there's no level to determine which guy how much testosterone respond to, and what will be let me rephrase this. There is no level that will determine which men will respond or not. And the consensus recommendation is that if a man has symptoms of low testosterone, obviously we're checking the testosterone level, but then the way to determine if they will respond to testosterone replacement therapy is to replace it. Okay, so you replace it, symptoms go away, testosterone level comes up, you treated it. But then the absolute number of 280 is very old school. Studies have shown that when men are below 450, they're typically symptomatic. Again, the level is 280 to 1100. Below 450, most men are symptomatic with decreased energy, more fatigue, more tiredness, more obesity, more diabetes. But when they get down to the 280, which is the severely low, they've usually got diabetes entrenched. They've already got erectile dysfunction. So we're like waiting till it's too far gone. We're treating with other drugs that do not have the safety that testosterone does. Next slide.
Dr. Mok, I have another live question coming through. If this person asks, if I'm only experiencing low energy, could my testosterone be low?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is yes. And we look at that ADAM questionnaire, and that was one of the things they're experiencing low test. If you're experiencing fatigue, can your testosterone be low? It's having that as its only symptom you may not have low testosterone. So we combine that with your level. If you have that plus erectile dysfunction plus decreased ability to play sports, and you say, yeah, it's 88% sensitive. So any one of those things alone, you might not. There might be something else going on. A good example is that I was treating a friend of mine who had low testosterone. They also had low thyroid, okay, which can make you tired as well. Somebody might be a little anemic. So we do a medical evaluation to see if there's another reason for fatigue, but that can be the only symptom of low testosterone. Resolution number 6 by the International Consensus Board, there is no scientific basis for any age-specific recommendations against the use of testosterone therapy for men. And this is a great one because what happened is that we have, as guys get older, they get more diseases. And doctors became kind of skittish about treating older men with what we think is a young man's hormone. But in reality, the older men have the most benefit from testosterone, which are the most likely to have heart attacks, diabetes, and die. So the idea that you got to wait, you got to stop it when you're a certain age, or you can't treat a guy who's 85 with low testosterone because he's older, it's absurd. It'd be kind of like saying we're not going to treat hypertension because hypertension occurs when you get older and you're old. So just live with the high blood pressure, or you had a stroke and this accepted. So it's one of those things where the FDA kind of, even the FDA and some of the medical associations have talked about this age thing. They were afraid of the older men, treating them. And it's almost like our bias as doctors is that we're thinking that people aren't supposed to go from old and frail to feeling more vigor. And there's nothing further from the truth.
Dr. Mok, you mentioned high blood pressure, and there's another question coming in. This person says, I have high blood pressure. Will testosterone replacement help my blood pressure go down?
Okay, well, that's a great question. So they did a study in Germany with a testosterone called testosterone undecanate. It's kind of like a pellet that we use now. The longer the testosterone lasts in your body, the more effective it is. That's why we're using either undecanate in Europe or pellets in the United States. But they followed men for 11 years. And these men on average had high blood pressure like we expect in men with low testosterone. And their blood pressure got better every single year for all 11 years. I mean, it was just a linear effect. So the first year wasn't a huge impact. But what they saw was many men who were on testosterone for 4, 5, 6 years, they came off their blood pressure medicines. So blood pressure, cholesterol, problem with erectile function, prostate health, energy, bone mass, muscle mass, weight, all get better in a linear fashion. So it's not like all of a sudden you get better. It's like every month keep getting better. Next one. Revolution number 7, the evidence does not support increased risks of cardiovascular events with testosterone therapy. And we're going to go again on the next slide, but the FDA in 2013, this what happened is that we've had 125 studies showing that testosterone reduces heart attacks substantially in men. And one study comes out in the Journal of American Medical Association, and right around November of 2013, where they said, oh, it looks like our study shows that men with testosterone replacement had more non-fatal events, cardiac events. And the FDA, within 3 days, the record history, they relabeled testosterone and say it might cause heart attacks. Well, that JAMA article was retracted. It doesn't exist anymore. Okay, I mean, you still find it, but it's been retracted. Turns out they used flawed logic. And 29 medical societies in the United States came out against the FDA's statement, because the FDA made the statement. They made the testosterone manufacturers label the testosterone as positive causing heart attacks. We know it cuts the risk in half. So it's one of the things that the bias at the FDA is, hey, we approved this in 1952. We don't want you guys using this unless you're missing your testicles, you have a brain injury. And they made this ridiculous statement in 2013 and haven't really removed it. They've since stated that, well, there is no evidence, but they haven't acknowledged the fact that the evidence is overwhelming that it's cardiac protective. So there's no increased risk of cardiovascular events. In fact, there's 50% less. And the older you get, it actually goes above 50%. There's another study done in about 700 men followed for 7 years, and they were a little older, and they found the reduction was more like 80%. So even as you get older men, there's even more of a benefit. Next slide. Resolution 8. The evidence does not support increased risk of prostate cancer with testosterone therapy. And this is an amazing bias because a lot of doctors, even urologists who are specialists in men's health, assume that testosterone replacement can increase risk of a man's prostate cancer. And the reason for this bias is that if a man has low testosterone and he has prostate cancer, men with low testosterone get more prostate cancer. If he's turned his testosterone off all the way, that's actually therapeutic. But they're also doing studies where they take men that have low testosterone, that have cancer, and they turn their testosterone level up very high. It does the same thing. It's just that if your testosterone is low, you get more prostate cancer. So you turn it all the way off or turn it all the way up, that may benefit it. but this is a bias that remains today. Testosterone replacement therapy does not increase a man's chance of prostate cancer. There's a slight, actually, decreased risk of prostate cancer in men with testosterone replacement therapy. Not sufficient enough that we'll use it as a prevention, but there's no evidence whatsoever, none, that prostate cancer risk goes up in testosterone replacement therapy. Next slide. Resolution 9, evidence does support the benefits of cardiometabolic disease, even diabetes, with testosterone therapy. And this was really an important one. We're calling for more literature, more information. And since the FDA in 2013 came out with their absurd statement that testosterone causes heart disease, and again, they retracted it. There's been dozens of studies, more than dozens, there's been hundreds of studies looking at benefits for men with diabetes, obesity, and heart disease, stroke, blood clots, heart failure, kidney failure, and the benefit of testosterone replacement therapy. We look at men who have congestive heart failure and are low testosterone, replace testosterone, they get better, they can exercise better, they lose weight. Look at men who are obese, that are getting diabetes, or what we call metabolic syndrome, and that actually halts and reverses. Look at men who have diabetes, they've actually had reversals of their diabetes and no longer needing these drugs. Look at men with heart disease and putting them on testosterone, the chance of an event goes down. So there's no evidence to support, there is evidence to support favorable risk reduction for cardiometabolic diseases, which are obviously linked.
Dr. Mok, another live question. What is the difference between testosterone injections and testosterone pellets?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's 3 types. I think I had that on another slide. Can you pop to the next slide? So there's 3 ways to get testosterone replacement. So what happened back in the 50s, it was an injection. And it worked pretty good, and we had a lot of history with it. We have a lot of science on the injections. And then in the 90s, they came out with gels. So what happens is that once testosterone was approved by the FDA, you can't get another approval, but you can approve another form. So a few companies came out with things that you put underneath your tongue and melt it, or a patch you put on your scrotum, or a gel you put on your skin. And they were using the testosterone benefits with injections to show that it was safe, and they are. The problem is with gels is they don't get the cardiac protection or the weight protection that injections do. And it's not clear why, but what happens is that when you take a gel of testosterone, your level goes up high, and then it wears off, and you put it on again, it goes up high, and it wears off, and you're doing this twice a day. So you have 4 peaks and valleys per day. And it looks like those peaks and valleys maybe don't have the benefit. Injections, we're doing it once a week. They're originally approved for once a month, and you get a peak and a valley every week. So more cardiac protection, more weight loss protection, more benefit. And the long-acting testosterone has shown the best long-term success, the most weight loss, biggest reduction in circumference of the waist, most improvement of diabetes, most improvement of cardiometabolic disorders. So in Europe, they use an injectable testosterone that lasts for about 3.5 months. In America, it's really not practical. It's not cost effective. So we use the pellets, which are inexpensive, and they mimic the long-acting injections. So benefits of hormone replacement, and these are just some soft ones, but I mean, increase energy, motivation, lose weight. And one of the things that happens that a lot of men come in and are like, well, I heard about my testosterone level is low. If I take testosterone replacement, I can lose weight. Yeah, but it doesn't happen right away, because what happens is you've got a guy that has a testosterone level, let's say around 300, and he's had some atrophy in his bones and his muscles. He's got a little fat. And then we put him on testosterone replacement. They actually gain about 5 to 15 pounds of bone and muscle mass over the next 6 months. And what happened, their fat is going down and their muscle mass is going up. And right about 6 months, that crosses, and now the fat keeps going down. So typically we see about, a year, you're usually lighter, about 10 pounds or something if you're overweight. But in the first 6 months, it doesn't really happen. Sex life, that usually takes a few weeks to get improved. The immediate benefit guys see is they feel less tired. They have less energy, or better energy. To reduce cardiac mortality, obviously you don't see that, because if you had the cardiac event, you're dead. If you took testosterone, you reduce your risk, and you just don't have a heart attack. So that's one of those benefits that's uncertain way in the future. The immediate ones are better energy, better weight, better sex life, better mood.
Dr. Mok, we got another question coming in. Someone's asking about what Dennis's experience was after he got the testosterone replacement.
Come back to you guys.
Sure. Well, when I first received the pellets, the first 3 weeks, there was a little adjustment time that I needed to, my body was reacting to the increase. So I was a little, had to get a hold of myself. I was a little edgy, a little tough to sleep. But after that, I started sleeping better at night. Instead of waking up every 2 to 3 hours, I sleep 4 or 5 hours nonstop. My focus, my ability to focus at work was better. I began to not be tired after dinner. I was ready to go. Let's go do something outside or whatever I could do. And after it's been about a year now, a little better than a year now, and I started losing size. Just didn't change anything in my lifestyle, but just started losing size. And one of the benefits for me is I don't have the desire to eat as much food as I did in the past. I always wanted this snack, and now I just really
When you talk about, you're talking about your waistline, right?
Yeah, my waistline has gone down a little bit, and I seem to feel like I've got some of my zip back from when I played hockey and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thanks. That was great.
There's another live question coming through. Dennis, maybe you can even answer this. Where are the pellets inserted?
They inserted them into my hip, right about here, right about the pocket, right above your pant pocket in the back, on one side or the other.
Yeah, so the pellets are about the size of a rice kernel, and a man might need like 10 pellets. And they'll go in like in a circumferential. So basically, they numb the skin up, make a little incision, and we tunnel them under the skin. And the gel is, the injection is just injection of muscle. We don't offer gels. We do have a few men on the injections because sometimes the pellets didn't work for them for some reason, but it's rare. It's about 95% of the time we're using the pellets. Most safety, best results, and gels are too inferior. They might be cheaper because your insurance might cover the gels, but an inferior product, we don't really give you that option, not in our practice. Next slide. So you can click the link. There's a link on the chat box that you can get your copy of the book. We'll send that to you. Just got to send your address. There's also an electronic version on our website. You can also call the office. I think we've had the bottom here in 800-577-2570. You call, make an appointment to see one of our physician assistants or nurse practitioners and our team, or physicians. And it starts out with doing a simple blood test. The blood test, again, is not one level that reliably predicts who will benefit and who will not, but we like to correlate that to your symptoms. And typically we're seeing, again, this lab normal is considered 280 to 1100. Most guys that are having some issues with symptoms are below 450. That's usually a sign that's they're going to get a significant benefit. Any other questions?
It looks like there's just one more that just came in. How often would someone need to get a pellet procedure done? That's
a great question. So let me just go back to my prior notes. Can you find where I was left off at? So typically, pellets are going to last in a man about 5 months. So we insert them and we redo it in about 5 months. Sometimes we'll do a blood work a month or two later to sort of see where you're at. Ideally, you were 25 years old and you did your testosterone level. We know you should say that, but that's not reality. And also, when we do the pellet, I told you normal is like, say, 280 to 1100, but in reality, normal might be 600 to 1100. But when you first get the pellet, you might get a surge past 1100, might go to 12 or 1300. Then it falls down to about 500. You're symptomatic again. That's sort of the nature, because the pellet does break down slowly over time. But when you start it out, it breaks down a little faster. So we get that kind of gradual drop off in levels. And typically, men, when they start getting tired again, that's when we replace it. The question is, okay, so I have the book for you. I want you to read it. This is important that, some guys aren't going to want to read stuff. I love reading, and some guys aren't really going to want to read stuff. If you don't have to read it, but we'll see you as a consultation. The myths that you've been reading online are false, and the truths you are here are true. And hopefully I've dispelled some of those things in this webinar. We talked about decreased cardiac mortality. We talked about better energy, better sex life, better control your weight. These are critical things. Like I say, if your testosterone is low, I think it is negligent not to fix it. Fix it with the testosterone replacement, because your risk of heart attack goes up by 50%. And it's obviously, as you're older, that still is more important that you do it. But even younger men with low testosterone, they got a likelier high time of having a shortened lifespan. So click on our website to get the link of the copy of the free book. Give us a call if you want to make an appointment. Cost was it something that somebody had asked about, and the cost for the testosterone replacement in our practice is $500. Is a $500 fee for the first visit and your first pellets, and that's $160 a month. And that covers it if you whether you need it every 5 months or every 3 months or every 6. But most guys are right around every 5 months. So again, it's $500 to enroll, and $160 per month. Do we have any other questions? So in summary, I hope you enjoyed this webinar. I really enjoyed talking about this subject because it's something that really has a huge impact on healthcare. And we started our business out as a cosmetic surgery practice, and I was one of the top surgeons in the United States doing cosmetic surgery. I kind of segued out of that and more focusing on things that have a big impact on our country's healthcare. And we look at healthcare in America, and we're spending $3.2 trillion a year on maintenance of disease, and it's growing at 5% per year. I looked at a lot of aspects of healthcare where there's like a vested interest to preserve disease, and there's sort of a negativity towards curing it. And sometimes even doctors are thinking, well, you know, we're not supposed to be curing obesity. We're not supposed to be curing heart disease. We focus on maintaining it. You look at the drugs we have available for symptoms of low testosterone. For obesity, we've got orlistat and a bunch of other drugs that really don't move the needle very much. Or sometimes they're stimulants. They're certainly not safe. They don't work good long term. But low testosterone obesity is clear, and over years it gets better every year. Look at diabetes. There's tons of medications out for diabetes. And all we're doing is maintaining the disease. We're not curing it. Whereas we get the cardiometabolic symptoms improved, weight down, blood sugar is better, insulin better, the diabetes is gone. You don't need to take them. We look at heart disease, again, a $600 billion a year issue in the United States alone. Half of those are men, maybe a little bit more than half. And the underlying cause for heart attacks for men is a clear link to low testosterone. We looked at an 83,000 man study where they were twice as likely to have heart attacks if they didn't treat it. We don't need more evidence than that. This is something that we are negligent but not treating. Not going ourselves to get our blood work tested, not doing the Adam questionnaire, not evaluating and considering it. I think American doctors sort of have a bias because we're used to being detailed by drug reps. And the way it works in healthcare, you might see if you ever go in the doctor's office, they got all these samples on the wall, but there's no testosterone pellet samples or gel or injectable samples. And the gels are kind of fallen by the wayside. So there's no doctor education for testosterone replacement because there's not a company that's making a bunch of money on it. Testosterone is generic. Okay, it's FDA approved product, but not FDA approved if you have your testicles. However, the doctor can still use it for that condition. We use an FDA approved lab for our testosterone pellets. It's very safe. There's virtually no adverse medical events other than occasionally people have to donate blood because their hemoglobin got a little bit high. And it's the opposite of having risk issues. There's obviously risk associated with not treating your low testosterone.
Dr. Mok, we had a question that came in. With the benefits of disease prevention, is testosterone replacement therapy covered by insurance?
The answer is yes and no. So it's covered by insurance, but as a gel or as an injectable, not enough. And when you're severely low, and in some cases, you have to have your testicles be damaged first. So it's not worth it. So what happens is that in healthcare, when we find big paradigm shifts, and we have more knowledge, it takes about 10 or 20 years for the health insurance industries to change gears. And interestingly, they seem to have a similar goal towards maintaining disease versus reversing it. But for example, let's say Medicare. Medicare requires your testosterone to be severely low, below 280, twice. You got to check it twice, because if you go above 280, they're not going to cover it. And they're only give you pay for once or twice a month, which is way inferior for injections. They won't pay for pellets at all unless you've done gels and injectables and it didn't work, which never happens. So it's such an old school thought. And you might be saying, why don't they do this to save money? It's just, this is the way it works. It's a bureaucracy, and they're mirrored in maintaining disease. I can't answer the whys. I've written books about different aspects of economic impacts of healthcare. And there's a lot of things we've done that were very stupid that are driving healthcare over the cliff. So if your main concern about is who's going to pay for it, yeah, you're going to have to go with the natural way and have the heart attack or deal with obesity or diabetes. Or you might be lucky enough that you have your testicles missing, and your testosterone is below 280, but then you're not going to be able to use a superior product. So it's one of those deals that can't fix that. Any other questions?
No, that's it.
So thank you very much.